Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, it's me Gamerturk, and I have just seen Detective Pikachu and I thought I'd briefly share my opinions about it as many of you guys were interested in the prospect. And to ensure some spoiler safety, the first half of the video will be non-spoiler so you can safely watch it, and the second half, which will be reasonably shorter, will be spoilers and I will warn you accordingly when the time comes. So let's start with the non-spoiler stuff, and I want to highlight one thing above all else. In these kinds of live-action movies, we have come to expect that the animation of the otherworldly beings being the quote-unquote distraction of the movie, whether they are giant robot cars, overgrown turtles, or one little uncomfortable to look at hedgehog in his latest trailer. But you can rest at ease knowing that the models and the animation of the Pokemon in this movie are absolutely great. Aside from one or two Pokemon featured in the movie who just don't fit due to their core design, all the Pokemon look absolutely great. They look detailed, they look alive, and most importantly, they look like they are a part of this world. They actually fit in nicely most of the time, and even the ones that don't quite fit in, one of those you actually saw in the trailer, Mr. Mime, does not really look out of place in terms of presence either. It's just the extreme cartoony design of the character and does not really cause any distractions. However, the way this was achieved was kinda disappointing. You see, you never really get a good look at most of these Pokemon. A majority of the scenes are in dark conditions, and the rare occasions where things are happening with some decent light conditions at the very least, the models are either far away or they move at higher speeds. This is more than a compliment than a criticism though, because they knew how to hide possible distractions effectively, so the animation of the Pokemon never take you out of the experience. However, our hero of the story, Pikachu, does not compromise anywhere. Pikachu is modeled and animated with extreme care, and it just shows. So expressive, so fluffy, so iconic, and yet so fitting into this world. Speaking of Pikachu, Ryan Reynolds by far steals the show in this movie. He's absolutely amazing, and it's a treat to have him as a main character. The movie just shines whenever he's on screen as Pikachu. I can't say the same about the other involved actors. The main character, Tim, wasn't bad by any means, but he just didn't really do anything particularly outstanding either. I never cared for him, as the movie just hastily tries to provide some backstory to him early on that is supposed to tie back at the end. But I can't say if it's the actor not really selling it or if it's the pacing of the narrative. I was not interested in him at all. Or, you know, it might just be that Ryan Reynolds' Pikachu is just much more entertaining to watch in comparison. But this goes for everyone else as well. The other characters that are present in the movie that is not Ryan Reynolds' Pikachu are just very dull. You know, I don't want to go into the rabbit hole that is the 20 plus seasons of anime and 20 plus years of games, but this movie does not have a Team Rocket, it does not have a Giovanni, it does not have a Brock, Misty, Dawn, Selena, or whatever companion or villain you can come up with from the series. Everyone aside from Pikachu and Tim feel like just a character based on a random trait. Heck, most Pokemon in the movie are more well defined than the actual characters and the villain of the movie, and most of them we just see as background props. And that brings me to the plot. I'm sorry, but this is where it goes down for me. Sure, I didn't expect a mind-blowingly amazing story from a live-action Pokemon movie, but I surely was not expecting the generic live-action movie formula either. You know, the good old Pokemon anime was silly, but it had some passion in its narrative. I still do remember the story of Zinnia as clearly as if I had played my Alpha Sapphire yesterday, so anything above what we actually got in the movie would be what I was expecting. All the trailers had this nice buddy cop movie vibe that got me excited, but the movie's plot turned out to be the usual I'm the bad guy that does bad things, and well, I feel like this is mostly due to the lack of strong personalities in the movie. The movie feels more like a buddy cop movie when two Pokemon are interacting on their own terms than it does when the two main characters of the movie interact with each other, and whether you agree with me or not, or maybe you'll even laugh at me for saying this today, but ultimately, I get the feeling that the one thing this movie has over the upcoming Sonic the Hedgehog movie is the stunning visuals and how they adapted these cartoony characters into the real world without altering any of their nostalgic and iconic designs. You can say it has less cringe, of course, but then again, this movie has quite a lot of cringe as well. It's just that most of the cringe gets lost in the nostalgia of the stunningly alive Pokemon, and also Ryan Reynolds just knows how to work off of the cringe. Also, two things I want to mention before I move on to the spoiler section. These are more minor, nitpick kind of things, so I left them to the end. First off, there's a great variety of Pokemon in the movie. Early in the movie, it was really remarkable seeing that many different Pokemon in the environment, but as the movie went on, it started to annoy me. The amount of Pokemon they show you early on in this movie is incredible, but that kinda becomes a problem when you realize those that you see in the first scene are literally all the Pokemon that show up as background props everywhere. And at a certain point you kinda start to wonder why there are so many Sneasels and Aipoms and Greninjas around. Don't get me wrong, they do use many different Pokemon subtly in various scenes or as plot material, but when you realize only a handful of Pokemon dominate the entire city landscape, it kinda starts pulling your attention, especially in certain cases where they just visually group the same Pokemon together for some reason. Secondly, I had the feeling that the movie was kind of unsure to whether to trust its audience, the veteran Pokemon fans, or explain everything for the new kids that are coming, so they just did both, and when you do both it starts getting jarring. Certain things assume you have some knowledge of the Pokemon in the spotlight to understand and appreciate the references, while in certain scenes it just snowballs into an exposition to provide context to that specific Pokemon, though this may be a thing they used in certain cases to pad the runtime a little since it's not a particularly long movie. As an additional point, they just couldn't make up their mind on how to make the Pokemon sound. Some of them just use the Pokemon anime approach and just say their name, Pikachu and Psyduck being the major examples, but most Pokemon just go with their usual animal sounds and growls, which just feels like an unneeded disparity between the two. You could have made Bulbasaur's just go say their names rather than giving them a cutesy, silky smooth bird voice or something, but yeah, that's what I got for the non-spoiler part. It's a fun movie in most cases, utilizes the nostalgia perfectly, and Ryan Reynolds just steals and carries the entire show for the entire duration of the ride, even at the very end. But this is your spoiler warning. It's not that I will outline the movie for you from this point onwards, but certain things require specific scenes as a reference, and that is my plan here. You have been warned. First off, I have to mention this one thing. If I have interpreted things correctly, this live-action Detective Pikachu movie actually does take place in the Pokemon anime universe. Mewtwo is one of the plot-related characters of this movie, and he is specifically referenced as the Pokemon that escaped Kanto region about 20 years ago, and well, Pokemon the first movie was released around 20 years ago, 1998 in Japan, and 1999 for rest of the world. Now, don't get me wrong, I barely watched any of the Pokemon movies myself. Pokemon games were huge in Turkey, but the anime was on hiatus for us for a very long time because the rumor has it there was this one kid who tried to jump off of a 7th story of an apartment building with the exclamation "I am Pidgeotto," and he kinda doomed us all in Turkey for a long time as Pokemon fans, getting the show banned for a very long time. But the first Pokemon movie was one of those that distinctively remained in my memory, and when I heard the reference, it really did bring a huge smile on my face. The movie also teases a whole lot that Mewtwo is the bad guy of the movie a lot by giving you extremely limited and misleading information on the events just for the sake of subversion, and I'm not really a fan of subversion for the sake of subversion. I understand when the bad guy of the movie shows a fake hologram to Tim to give him the wrong idea, since that's actually part of the narrative, you know, as we experience things from Tim's perspective. But when you open up the movie with a prologue scene where Mewtwo follows Tim's dad's car by saying, "They're out," and then they show a very specific angle to hide the entire truth, that kinda becomes cheating, you know, since the subversion is not really part of the narrative. The information is literally being withheld from you, the viewer, just so that the mystery works. But I don't know, then again, this is just coming from a Pokemon fan who's now 24 years old and is looking at most things from a different perspective than what a kid does. It's not like it destroys the movie or anything. If you're a veteran Pokemon fan, you will realize the moment Tim arrives in the city that Bill Nighy's character is the bad guy, since the scene opens up with a 3-minute monologue advertisement of how much of a good guy he actually is. Like, that's your red flag there. And when they reference it's the Pokemon who fled Kanto region 20 years ago, you'll definitely make the connection that Mewtwo is not the bad guy here if you pay attention to that one sentence detail. But again, it certainly does not hurt the movie, it just lets me, a 24-year-old fan, to ramble about from a movie logic perspective. Another thing I want to praise is how they handled Mewtwo's animations. You know Mewtwo, he is always calm and collected, mysterious and menacing, he barely moves and is constantly in this slow, intimidating mode. Towards the end of the movie, the main villain transfers his consciousness into Mewtwo's body, and they actually paid enough attention to his movements, as you can clearly recognize it's not Mewtwo controlling that body, it's distinctively this rash person who just received the powers of the most powerful Pokemon, or at least what was once the most powerful Pokemon. There's like way too many Pokemon gods now that I don't want to piss off any fans of latter generations. He has a hard time of adjusting to his new balance. He speaks using his mouth rather than telepathically like Mewtwo does. He constantly moves rather than keeping his posture and presence in an intimidating way. It was really nice attention to detail until the moment that he instantly figured out all of his powers, but kids movie. But yeah, as I said in the non-spoiler part, the fact that they explained Pokemon like Psyduck and Mr. Mime but then leave Pokemon like Greninja and Ditto to your own knowledge just feels jarring. At first, I was under the impression that they just felt the need to explain the old generation Pokemon for the kids who will watch the movie, but it's not really the case. Old and new, they either turn into an exposition or just let it be not more than a name drop, and I feel like that just loses you both audiences due to the back and forth. Knowledgeable fans just go, yes, I know Psyduck is a stressed out Pokemon and has a mental breakdown when it reaches a threshold, and people who don't know anything, which I believe would be the parents who bring their kids to the movie at this point, they would be like, I have no clue what this blue ninja big turtle Pikachu is capable of. If you're a kid, like when I watched Pokemon the first movie though, you're cool. It's okay, you won't have anything to complain about, just watch the fun stuff. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and a special thanks to all my patrons and YouTube members for supporting me. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and share and subscribe and hit the bell icon for more content. Until then, stay cool.